Look into the darkest corners of the ocean. Down there, the rules of biology begin to bend. But even in the deepest, most unforgiving abysses of our modern world, nothing compares to the absolute biomechanical nightmare that once ruled the ancient seas. Nature is often cruel. It is often brutal. But rarely is it industrial. Yet, hidden deep within the fossil record, there is an anomaly that defies all logic. A creature that looks less like a product of natural selection and more like a weapon designed in a twisted, subterranean laboratory. Imagine a predator, a behemoth stretching up to 12 meters in length, gliding silently through pitch-black waters. It does not hunt like a modern shark. It does not simply bite and tear. It operates machinery. In its lower jaw lies a perfect, spiraling circular saw, an anatomical impossibility that left the brightest minds in science completely baffled for over a century. We are told that evolution creates balance. We are told that form follows function. But this creature breaks every known law of anatomical sanity. It is an entity that simply should not exist. To understand the sheer terror of this predator, we must travel back, far beyond the reign of the dinosaurs. 290 million years ago, the Earth was a vastly different, deeply hostile world. This was the Permian period, a time when the oceans were vast, acidic, and swarming with lethal anomalies. The supercontinent Pangaea dominated the globe, surrounded by the colossal Panthalassic Ocean. It was an arena of pure, unadulterated survival, where only the most extreme adaptations guaranteed another day of life. The waters of this era were not the bright, sunlit, coral-filled environments we picture today. They were dark, deep, and terrifyingly unforgiving. Oxygen levels fluctuated wildly. The very chemistry of the water was a constant test of endurance. In this suffocating heavy environment, life was engaged in a brutal, unending arms race. Prey animals developed thick, impenetrable armor. Shells became heavy, spiked fortresses. Scales hardened into solid bone. To survive as an apex predator in this ancient arms race, you needed more than just speed or brute strength. You needed a mechanism to breach the impenetrable. And nature, in its cold, calculating cruelty, provided exactly that. For decades, the true nature of this beast remained one of the most agonizing mysteries in the entire history of paleontology. When the first fossils were pulled from the ancient rock, scientists literally did not know what they were looking at. They did not find a complete skeleton. They did not find a massive skull. All they found was the spiral. A tight, perfectly preserved coil of razor-sharp, heavily serrated teeth. It looked like the coiled shell of a dead snail, but lined with the teeth of a great white shark. The scientific community was paralyzed by confusion. Some experts initially thought it was just a bizarre, spiky shell. But when they realized it was actual dental weaponry, the theories grew even more desperate and chaotic. Eminent researchers suggested the spiral was attached to the tip of the snout, a ridiculous appendage used to slash at schools of fish. Others theorized it hung from the dorsal fin, or perhaps dragged beneath the tail as a defensive weapon. Nobody wanted to accept the horrific truth, because accepting the truth meant acknowledging that nature was capable of engineering a biological buzzsaw. It meant accepting that a living, breathing animal possessed a moving, rotating mechanism designed specifically for butchering living flesh. The human mind naturally recoils at the idea. We expect animals to have jaws that open and close, not jaws that roll, slice, and shred. But as technology advanced, as high-resolution scans peered deep inside the ancient rock, the terrifying reality was finally laid bare. The spiral did not sit on the nose. It did not hang from the tail. It was anchored deep inside the lower jaw, a perpetual engine of death. Here is the most chilling detail of its biology. Modern sharks lose their teeth and grow new ones, discarding the old into the sand. This monster did not. Every single tooth this predator ever grew over its entire lifespan was kept. As new, Larger teeth formed at the back of the jaw. The older, smaller teeth were pushed forward and rolled downward, coiling tightly inside a specialized cavity in the lower jaw. Imagine the sheer terror of an encounter. There is no warning. There is no roar. Just the sudden, catastrophic impact in the dark water. The prey, perhaps an armored cephalopod or a thick-scaled fish, feels the initial crush of the jaw. But then, the true horror begins. The teeth engage. Dozens of serrated blades, each perfected by millions of years of ruthless evolution, begin to cycle. As the mouth closed, the entire whirl of teeth was mechanically forced backward. It was a continuous, slicing motion. It dragged the prey backward, pushing it deeper into the throat, while simultaneously flaying it alive. A self-sharpening, ever-growing meat grinder that operated with flawless, brutal efficiency. The flesh is not simply bitten. It is sawed. The struggle is completely futile. Every movement only drives the jagged blades deeper into the wound. The ocean fills with a sudden cloud of dark blood, quickly carried away by the cold currents, as the victim is systematically dismantled and swallowed. This was not just an animal. It was the apex executioner of a dying world. The Earth was rapidly approaching the Great Dying, a cataclysm that would soon wipe out 95% of all marine life. Volcanoes would choke the sky with ash. The oceans would turn toxic and devoid of air. Yet, in the face of the ultimate global apocalypse, this biomechanical terror did not just survive. It thrived. It is the ultimate, terrifying proof that nature does not care for beauty, harmony, or grace. In the darkest, most desperate hours of our planet, nature favored the absolute architecture of slaughter. To understand the true horror of the Helicoprion, we must dissect the very mechanics of its murder weapon. We must ask the questions that kept paleontologists awake at night. If you have a circular saw spinning in your lower jaw, how do you close your mouth without cutting your own skull in half? Nature rarely makes a mistake of that magnitude. When researchers finally reconstructed the skull in 3 dimensions, using high-energy scans of uncrushed fossils, they discovered an anatomical truth that was somehow even more disturbing than the saw itself. The upper jaw of the Helicoprion was entirely toothless. It was a barren, fleshy vault. There were no opposing blades. There was no grinding surface. This raises a chilling micro-mystery. How do you kill with only half a weapon? The answer lies in the physics of a vacuum. When this 12-meter leviathan struck, the toothless upper jaw acted as a crushing anvil, pinning the prey in place. Then, the lower jaw engaged. The spiral did not merely bite. It rotated backward in a specialized slot, acting like a devastating hook and slice system. It was designed to snag, drag, and pull the victim down into the dark cavern of the throat. It was a one-way ticket into an abyss of digestive acids. Once those serrated edges caught your flesh, the more you struggled, the faster you were fed into the machine. But what could possibly require such a grotesque and specific evolutionary adaptation? What was swimming in the Permian oceans that demanded a self-sharpening biological buzzsaw? Before we descend further into the dark diet of this ancient predator, I want you to leave a mark in the fossil record of this channel. Type the word predator in the comments right now. It signals the algorithm that true, uncompromising scientific investigation still commands an audience. Let us continue into the depths. The primary targets of the Helicoprion were not soft, vulnerable fish. They were cephalopods, specifically ancient relatives of the squid and octopus, but with a terrifying twist. In the Permian period, many of these creatures lived inside heavy, armored shells, much like the modern nautilus or the extinct ammonites. These shells were solid, mineralized fortresses, built to withstand the immense pressure of the deep ocean and the crushing jaws of giant reptiles. A normal predator would try to crush the shell. A normal predator would shatter its own teeth, trying to break through the armor. But the Helicoprion was not normal. It was a precision surgeon wielding a meat hook. When it hunted an armored cephalopod, it did not waste energy crushing the thick outer shell. Instead, it struck at the soft, exposed tentacles protruding from the front. The spiral jaw would violently hook into the slippery flesh of the squid. As the jaw retracted, the spinning blades dragged the soft body backward, literally ripping the creature clean out of its protective armor in one swift, catastrophic motion. The heavy, empty shell would simply drift down into the abyssal mud, completely untouched, while the soft cephalopod was swallowed whole. It was extraction by mutilation. The efficiency is staggering. It bypassed the armor entirely by weaponizing the very anatomy of its prey against itself. But as we peel back the layers of this creature, another, even darker mystery emerges from the phylogenetic tree. For over a century, the world called the Helicoprion a shark. It possessed the cartilage, the sleek profile, the predatory dominance. But modern paleontology has uncovered a far more unsettling truth. The Helicoprion was not a shark at all. It belonged to a ghost lineage of the deep, a group known as the holocephalians, or ratfish. Today, the distant relatives of this monster are the chimeras. They are bizarre, alien-looking fish that haunt the extreme depths of our modern oceans, possessing large, dead eyes and venomous spines, living out their lives in eternal darkness. This genetic revelation changes everything we thought we knew about its behavior. Sharks are often surface hunters. They are fast, aggressive, and highly visible. But chimeras are creatures of the abyss. This tells us that the Helicoprion was likely a phantom of the deep ocean trenches. It did not hunt in the bright, sunlit waters. It stalked the freezing, crushing depths where sunlight could not penetrate. Imagine the sensory nightmare of this environment. In total darkness, vision is useless. To hunt, this titan relied on a highly advanced network of electroreceptors dotting its snout, capable of detecting the faint, electrical heartbeat of a hidden squid hiding in the mud. It sensed the fear. It sensed the pulse of its prey long before it was ever seen. It would rise from the absolute blackness, a 12-meter shadow moving without a sound. No warning, just the sudden detection of an electrical field, followed immediately by the devastating mechanical rotation of the saw. This deep water isolation might be the key to the greatest mystery of all. As the Permian period drew to a close, a global catastrophe was brewing beneath the Earth's crust. The Siberian traps began to erupt, unleashing an apocalyptic volume of magma and toxic gas. The oceans began to heat up. The water became hopelessly acidic. Oxygen vanished from the shallows, suffocating millions of species in a matter of decades. The Great Dying had begun. The world was literally ending. Most apex predators starved or choked to death. The mighty rulers of the food chain were instantly eradicated. Yet, against all odds, against all biological reason, the fossil record shows us something terrifying. The Helicoprion did not die. It crossed the boundary of the apocalypse. How did a predator of this massive size survive the most devastating extinction event in the history of our planet? What dark, abyssal secrets allowed the biological buzzsaw to keep turning while the rest of the world burned? The Great Dying was not a singular catastrophic day. It was a prolonged, agonizing strangulation of the biosphere lasting for tens of thousands of years. The oceans absorbed billions of tons of carbon dioxide. The surface waters reached boiling temperatures, and the life-giving oxygen was systematically stripped from the shallows. Almost 96% of all marine species perished in a geological blink of an eye. Their suffocated remains rained down into the pitch-black depths, creating an endless, rotting avalanche of death. And down there, in the crushing, freezing pressure of the abyss, the Helicoprion waited. Because it belonged to the ancient lineage of deep-water chimeras, this creature was already genetically hardwired to survive in hell. It was heavily adapted to an environment utterly devoid of sunlight and desperately starved of oxygen. Its metabolism was slow, calculated, and terrifyingly cold. While the mighty apex predators of the sunlit reefs gasped and starved to death in a toxic, acidic soup. The biomechanical executioner simply opened its jaws and consumed the rotting fallout of a dying world. It became the ultimate undertaker of the Permian Ocean. But scavenging dead flesh, drifting down from the surface, is not enough to sustain a 12-meter titan indefinitely. Eventually, the ocean current stagnated completely. The toxic dead zones expanded deeper into the trenches. To survive, the Helicoprion had to hunt whatever living things remained in the suffocating darkness. This is exactly where the biological buzzsaw proved its ultimate, ruthless value. In a broken ecosystem where food is vanishingly rare, a predator cannot afford to miss. It cannot afford to let its prey escape wounded. It cannot afford a prolonged, violent struggle that burns precious, limited oxygen. Efficiency was the only currency that mattered. The spiral jaw guaranteed a 100% kill rate upon contact. If those heavily serrated, self-sharpening blades even grazed the flesh of a victim, the mechanical trap was sprung. The jaw retracted. The prey was instantaneously hooked, sliced open, and mechanically dragged down the throat. There was no escape. Nature had inadvertently built a machine perfectly calibrated for the end of the world. It was an organism that demanded so little energy to stalk its prey, yet destroyed life with such absolute, unyielding precision. As the volcanic ash finally settled and the Earth bled into the early Triassic period, roughly 250 million years ago, the global oceans were practically empty. The water was a desolate, silent wasteland. But the Helicoprion emerged from the deep-sea trenches as the undisputed sovereign of the New World. The fierce competition was completely gone. The heavy, armor-plated fish of the past were annihilated. It had survived the absolute worst planetary catastrophe imaginable. This forces us to confront an incredibly unsettling biological paradox. If a massive apex predator possesses a flawless, unassailable weapon, and if it successfully survives the most devastating mass extinction in the entire history of our planet, it should theoretically conquer the globe. It should be the ancestor of every modern terror in the sea. It should still be haunting the blackest depths of the Marianas Trench today, feeding on giant squid in the dark. Before we uncover the brutal, violent truth of what finally dismantled this prehistoric machine, you must make a choice. If you wish to continue exploring the darkest anomalies of Earth's biological history, and if you want to understand the terrifying creatures that time tried to bury, ensure you are subscribed to this channel right now. We are descending deeper into the fossil record, and there is no turning back. The tragic fall of the Helicoprion is a masterclass in the sheer cruelty of extreme specialization. For tens of millions of years, the spinning spiral jaw was the ultimate, inescapable answer to heavy armor and slow-moving, deep-sea prey. It was a weapon of mass destruction for a specific era. But the Triassic Ocean was changing, the world was recovering, and the oceans were becoming incredibly fast. Evolution is a merciless, unending arms race. As aquatic life rebounded from the brink of total annihilation, new lineages of prey completely abandoned thick, heavy shells. Survival now relied entirely on speed. The heavy, lumbering, armored squids of the past were rapidly replaced by nimble, fast-swimming, highly intelligent cephalopods. The slow, heavily scaled fish were replaced by agile, hydrodynamic swimmers that could change direction in a fraction of a second. The biomechanical buzzsaw, a weapon of slow, deliberate, devastating power, suddenly found itself swinging at phantoms. The Helicoprion was a heavy, lumbering dreadnought, a slow-moving battleship operating in an ocean that was rapidly filling with swift, agile torpedoes. The very weapon that allowed it to survive the global apocalypse was rapidly becoming a heavy, useless burden. To catch these new, incredibly fast prey items, a predator needed a mouth that could snap shut in a millisecond, not a complex rotary mechanism that required careful alignment and close-quarters contact. And an even darker shadow was gathering on the horizon. The ancient reign of the giant cartilaginous fish was coming to a sudden, brutal end, because something completely unprecedented was entering the water from the coastal shores. Something that breathed atmospheric air, possessed a solid skeleton of dense bone, and harbored a level of hyper-aggressive intelligence the oceans had never before witnessed. The era of the fish was over. The marine reptiles were awakening, and they were extremely hungry. The ocean was no longer a sanctuary of slow, silent predators. It was becoming a high-speed theater of war. The early ancestors of the ichthyosaurs, aquatic reptiles that had recently abandoned the land to conquer the seas, brought a devastating new biological technology to the Triassic waters. They breathed atmospheric air. They possessed massive, highly developed brains. They had solid, heavily calcified skeletons that anchored immense, powerful muscles. Most terrifying of all, they were fast, unbelievably fast. Against these sleek, torpedo-shaped reptiles, the Helicoprion was a relic from a forgotten, slower age. When the biomechanical predator attempted to hunt, its highly specialized strategy failed completely. The electrical fields it sensed in the dark abyss were no longer slow, armored cephalopods dragging themselves along the ocean floor. They were agile, darting phantoms that vanished before the heavy jaw could even begin its lethal rotation. The spiral saw, a weapon meticulously crafted by evolution over millions of years to bypass heavy armor, was completely useless against a target it could not catch. Starvation is a slow, agonizing process in the deep ocean, as the agile marine reptiles multiplied and dominated the sunlit surface. They systematically hunted the oceans clean of prey, leaving nothing to drift down into the abyssal trenches. The Helicoprion was forced to expend massive amounts of energy swimming longer distances, frantically searching for food in an increasingly barren wasteland. But every movement required oxygen, and the heavy, dragging weight of the massive lower jaw was a constant drain on its dying reserves. The ultimate tragedy of the biological buzzsaw was that it could not adapt. It was locked into a hyper-specialized anatomy. It could not shed the spiral jaw. It could not suddenly evolve to swim faster. It was a prisoner of its own terrifying perfection. Soon, the dynamic shifted. The supreme executioner of the Permian apocalypse, the unkillable Leviathan that had survived the boiling off of the oceans and the choking of the skies, was no longer the apex predator. It became the prey. The new marine reptiles did not possess complex, rotating saws. They did not need them. They possessed rows of simple, conical teeth, designed for one brutal purpose: piercing and gripping. Imagine the final, desperate days of this ancient dynasty. A 12-meter giant, weakened by starvation, drifting slowly through the cold, dark waters. It is suddenly surrounded by shadows. Fast, highly coordinated reptiles striking from multiple angles. They do not attack the terrifying lower jaw. They strike the gills. They tear at the soft fins. They use their superior speed and intelligence to systematically dismantle the heavily armed giant, leaving it to bleed out into the freezing depths. One by one, the last members of this ghost lineage succumbed to the crushing reality of obsolescence. Their massive, heavy jaws dragged their lifeless bodies down into the suffocating mud of the ocean floor. The flesh rotted away. The cartilage dissolved into nothingness. The only thing that remained, the only piece of evidence that this biomechanical nightmare ever haunted our planet, was the heavy, fossilized spiral of teeth. The Helicoprion is not just a monster from the deep past. It is a profound, terrifying warning. It represents the absolute, unyielding cruelty of the natural world. It proves our dark thesis. Evolution is not a ladder climbing toward a perfect, immortal form. It is a blind, ruthless game of immediate survival. What makes an organism invincible today might be the exact mechanism that guarantees its complete annihilation tomorrow. Nature does not care about past victories. It does not honor survival. When the rules of the ocean changed, the Earth discarded its most perfectly designed killer without a second thought, burying it in stone for 250 million years. As we look at the strange, spiraling fossils resting silently in museum display cases, we are forced to confront our own terrifying insignificance. If the Earth can engineer a weapon of such apocalyptic perfection, only to effortlessly wipe it from existence when it is no longer useful, we must accept a very dark truth about our own fragile place in the universe. We are only here until the world decides to change the rules again. To ensure you are fully prepared for the darkest biological truths this planet has to offer, check the link in the description right now to secure your copy of our exclusive ebook about extinct megafauna. Inside, we document the brutal reality of the creatures time tried to erase. And if you want to support this continuous deep dive into the shadows of history, consider backing our biological investigations through our Patreon, or by leaving a contribution on Buy Me a Coffee. The links are waiting for you below. Stay vigilant. The fossil record is far from closed.